From March 21st to the 30th, Manitoba Theatre for Young People is inviting audiences on a journey into the deep, dark woods. MTYP, in collaboration with Tall Stories Theatre, is presenting Gruffalo's Child, a playful and heartwarming adaptation of Julia Donaldson's award-winning sequel to her book, The Gruffalo. Using music, delightful costumes, and puppetry, Gruffalo's Child brings the beloved tale to life, captivating children and enchanting parents as they follow the little Gruffalo's adventure in search of the legendary Big Bad Mouse. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about MTYP and Tall Stories' presentation of Gruffalo's Child, I am joined by, once again, Artistic Associate for MTYP, Sarah Flynn. Hey, Sarah, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me back.
So I got to confess, The Gruffalo and Gruffalo's Child are books that unfortunately were not in my generation's wheelhouse. Were you raised as a Gruffalo kid, or?
I was not raised as a Gruffalo kid, honestly. They were not books that I had read to me as a little one, so I didn't know them until recently.
Until the production.
Yeah, until my first season at MTYP, and they're like, oh yeah, we're bringing the Gruffalo from Tall Stories London in. And I saw it, and obviously I loved it because it's such a good story, and they do such a good job of it. And so then when they were like, we're doing the sequel, we're doing the Gruffalo's Child, we were like, well, we got to do that one too. Got to just make it even better.
It is being presented in collaboration with Tall Stories Theatre. They're from London. Who are they, and what can you tell me about them?
Tall Stories London, they're a company that creates theater for young audiences, but across the pond in London. They do a lot of work of creating like musicals and putting music into these well-known stories. They often do well-known stories. There's, they're working on like a Three Little Pigs right now, and they have a Billy Goat's Gruff and like all that kind of thing. So they're always doing adaptions of stories that we know, but then adding a lot of really interesting costumes and dance and music in and sort of adapting them in that way. And that's sort of been their shtick for the last, 30 years that they've been working.
There's a touring cast that's going to be coming from London. How does the collaboration between MTYP and Tall Stories Theatre work? Are they bringing their own costumes and musicians, and MTYP is providing the sets? How does that all work?
So they bring everything, actually.
Wow.
We tell them that we want them to come, and they bring all their things with them. So they come with all their sets, with all their costumes, and with all the people to, perform the show, as well as a stage manager that makes it all happen behind the scenes. We just have the lights. They tell us where to put them, and we turn them on, but they don't bring those. So everything comes from them. They, they had the design team back in London that created all the things, and they, rehearsed it back in London with the director and created it all. And then they're actually touring across, they started January 10th, I think, and they're touring until April 27th across Canada and the U.S. with all their things.
Oh, fantastic. The story follows Gruffalo's Child as she searches for the Big Bad Mouse. What can audiences expect from her journey on stage? And do the sets change as she goes from the owl to the snake, etc.?
Yeah, so they do a really clever job of, using the minimal sets that they bring, because it all has to fit in their Sprinter van, and creating these beautiful trees that with this moving piece for the cave that the Gruffalo lives in, that the Gruffalo's Child is with her dad in, and then they open that up, and then they have these other moving trees that they like move around the stage as the Gruffalo's Child travels through the forest, and different things become different things. And they open a little hatch on the one of the trees, and that's the owl's house, and they put the trees together, and that's the fox's house. And there's just little things like that they're able to really make it quite clever.
Oh, great. Gruffalo and Gruffalo's Child are written using these rhyming couplets, and there's so much charm and humor to the stories. How does the production capture the spirit of that and that playfulness of the books?
Yeah, I think a lot of the rhyming couplets actually lend themselves really well to the music that they write and then they put into it, because it makes sense for it to rhyme in song. And so they create these songs with these choruses that repeat over and over, and they have these rhymes in them that are from the books directly, and they just make perfect sense. And I mean, it makes sense for an owl to rhyme. Why would an owl not speak in rhyme? And a mouse and a snake and all these characters just, they speak these rhymes, and there's added language in there for the in-between because it's not all directly from the book, They expand upon those interactions, but it's still full of all those rhyming couplets. And they say most of the words in the book, word for word, happen on stage.
One of the things I saw and noticed with the trailer is it reminded me a lot of a musical. They are singing the songs, but there's also movement as well. Are there live musicians for the production as well?
No, so it's all recorded music that they bring with them. It would be very hard to bring a large, multiple piece band with them on tour across Canada. So it's all recorded music, but they do all their, all the singing is live, and they are moving throughout and dancing, and they do all of, there's the 3 actors and there's all those moving pieces on stage. They are moving all of them. It's just the 3 of them. We had some kids today see a show, and they asked afterward, they were like, who was moving all the stuff back there? And they were like, it was us.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the 3 of us. We're doing it all.
Yeah. I mean, there are, as you mentioned, there are 3 actors, but one of them in particular is performing multiple characters. How does Billy McCleary do that? How does he make those costume changes?
I mean, he hides behind the trees when the Gruffalo's child is searching through the woods for the little mouse and being narrated by the other actor, and he changes his costume and he comes out and he just has a completely different body and a completely different voice, and oh, that's the fox. Like, it's very obvious when he's the fox, when he's the snake, when he's the owl, and when he's the Gruffalo. Yeah.
In the list of the creative team, there are puppet designers and there's like puppet construction assistant. Is there puppetry in the show as well?
Sort of, yeah. So there's one moment where the mouse is trying to show the big bad mouse to the Gruffalo's child to scare off the Gruffalo's child, because otherwise the Gruffalo's child will probably eat the mouse. And that's done using like a large scale shadow puppet.
Okay.
And then the Gruffalo itself, I think, is also like his bottom half is puppeteered to make him extra big so that the actor playing the Gruffalo's child actually looks really little sitting on his lap. It's quite cool.
I have to confess, I had a very fun time this morning watching the books on the old YouTubes. I watched Gruffalo and Gruffalo's Child. And one of the things that struck me is this idea of brains over brawn. Is that one of the subjects that MTYP hopes to get across to children? Are there any other life lessons that you hope children will learn from the production?
I mean, there's always something to learn. We don't try and look at it as like, what are the kids going to learn? Because it's not necessarily just about education. It's also about having fun and having that experience and seeing things, told in a new way. And that you're going to learn from that. You're going to, you always learn from a new experience, and kids are constantly having new experiences. But yeah, I guess there is a bit of that, it's not always about being the bigger and the scary one. If you can like trick them with your brain, you can get ahead too.
Yeah.
Save yourself from being eaten.
In a couple of different ways. What do you hope audiences are going to take away from Gruffalo's Child?
I think they're going to have so much fun when those 3 are up there singing and dancing, and they interact with the audience a lot too. And there's some of those themes of panto, which is like a very common type of theater in the UK that's slowly starting to find its way more and more in Canada. There's more of it, and it's just such a direct relationship where you need the audience to be there with you to make the show happen on stage. And so that relationship is really beautiful. And, the kids are clapping their hands, adding along to the mouse trying to eat the Gruffalo, and they're, yelling things for the snake to dance with them. And it's really beautiful.
Wonderful. Sarah, as always, this has been so fun to have you back here in studio. You are welcome here anytime. Gruffalo's Child, as presented by MTYP and Tall Stories Theatre, sounds like it is going to be just fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today.
Thanks for having me.
For our Classic 107 listeners, Gruffalo's Child runs from March 21st to the 30th. For more details, visit mtyp.ca or go to classic107.com. I've embedded a direct link to the show page and the article about the play that you can find there now. Sarah, thanks again.
Thanks.